I just sat here recording the album review. Microphone wasn't even on. Let's do it again. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I hope that you're having a lovely day. My name is Justin, and today I am giving you my album review of Mike Oldfield's album Ommadawn, his third studio album, which was released in 1975. As with most of the album reviews, you can also go back and listen to my initial reactions and my initial thoughts on each of the pieces throughout this album. But for now, let's get into it. So after convincing Virgin Records to build a studio within his home at the Beacon, Mike began work on his third album. But it wasn't without some hiccups along the way of the recording process. For example, some of the tapes that he was recording on were damaged and he lost the actual music that was recorded there. But most unfortunately was the passing of his mother. Now, even out of these unfortunate events, Mike picked himself back up. And I mean, like, really picked himself back up. Starting where we left off with Hargest Ridge, which took us soaring over the English countryside, Ommadawn gently descends us into a slightly new territory, and yet familiar lands. Two sidelong pieces is still the name of the game here on this album, with a variety of instruments and stylish melodies, and yet it feels like the culmination and the peak of what Mike was trying to do creatively with his other albums. Bringing together the unique tonal platforms of Tubular Bells and the variety there, with the homogeneous and folk leanings of Hargest Ridge. At this point, I've heard his first 4 albums, and this is like perfect. This is like his best one that I've heard so far. Or is it? Part 1 opens with some familiar folky guitars, but it doesn't take long before we start hearing some new elements being breathed in, filling in the spaces with its resonance, such as the very misty chants, the crashing gongs, and the very cryptic synths. A simple but effective drum pattern comes in and continues our descent into this new land. Big horns and whistling notes open us into a new symphonic window as well, before we playfully dance along and encounter a bit of a springy jig. The piece delightfully swings in its general progressive and symphonic pace until Mike comes in with some very colorful and vibrant guitar work about 10 minutes into the piece, setting a completely new environment through which the piece reaches totally new heights. The African drums come in and take a spot on center stage, performing almost some sort of ritual before allowing a space for a sublimity and then returning with absolute transcendent chanting. It's in these last moments that the track attains enlightenment. The ceremony commences and marches purposely with a quiet kind of divinity, as if invocations were taking place around us. The rising melodies, the drums, the flashes of acoustic guitar, the strings, the horns, the bass. Mike's guitar once again cries out with some screaming leads. More, crying, before we're left with nothing but the solemn beating of the drums, courtesy of Jabula. Nirvana in Buddhism is defined as a transcendent state in which there is neither suffering, desire, nor sense of self, and the subject is released from the effects of karma and the cycle of death and rebirth. It represents the final goal of Buddhism. The ending of part 1 is probably the closest musical representation to this state. Part 2 begins with some very multi-layered guitars, making for a very dramatic entrance. There's a radiant cascading of melodies within this particular section of the intro that kind of start us off in the clouds. At least myself, I feel like I'm sun-gazing towards the heavens. Soon enough, bells begin to chime, denoting some sort of coming change, almost like the change in atmosphere when a rain is about to begin. We open our eyes daydreaming with Mike on an open field, making shapes out of the clouds, and you get the lovely twangs of his guitar and his folk stylings, just letting it speak to us as we're just daydreaming and taking it all in. The uilleann pipes beautifully call us home, call us to the shores that we've never even set foot on. Leslie Penning also provides a very lively recorder into this new setting, before we are snappily shifted into, once again, a totally new environment. Out of all this, we're moved into something very playful, very folky. And I think that this is really cool because it shows that the piece as a whole doesn't have to feel so serious. There's still some levity to be found within the creativity of this particular part. Even with this folky dance going on, Mike still provides some sizzling guitar work.
And then
we get into On Horseback. Horseback is just the cream on top of your cupcake. It is the sugar in the coffee. This is just a fun ending. A gentle and melodic hook, a childlike innocence, of course helped by the choir. The beauty of the lyrics, just the simplicity of riding on a horse and all your problems being solved just by riding that big old beastie. This is such a joy to listen to, especially to hear the happiness in Mike's voice. The chorus is irresistibly catchy, and the small changes that are made into each chorus as it comes back around just make it that much more interesting to listen to for the next time. The children's choir adds a unique charm to it, and a little bit of an innocence, you know, finding happiness in the things that are just not complicated. It may feel somewhat out of place on the album, but I also feel like it really doesn't. Anyways, those are just a few thoughts on each of the pieces, but let's get into my favorite lyrics, my favorite moment on the album, and my song rankings. So my favorite lyrics are going to be from On Horseback. I like beer and I like cheese and like the smell of a westerly breeze, but what I like more than all of these is to be on horseback.
Hey, hey, we go through the snow.
Listen, I love that. It's so catchy. Once again, I just love the simplicity of the lyrics. I mean, sometimes you don't have to find happiness in these complicated things. I mean, sometimes your happy place can be on the back of a horse. My favorite moment in the album is, if I didn't express it quite right, is the ending of part 1. After that climax, the total and sheer drop off, like being dropped off of a cliff into nothing but the drums. That, I mean, if you go back and listen to my first reaction, I said that my heartbeat was just like pounding. I could feel my heart in my chest, and I get that feeling every time I listen to it. I mean, how can you not? And then my song rankings are very easy. Part 1, Part 2, On Horseback. I think that this is a fantastic album. This is definitely one of Mike's best. Like I said, at this exact point, I've only heard his first 4 albums, but like I said, I mean, this is really, really up there. Matter of fact, it's pretty much perfect. Unless... Guys, I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, you can do the like and subscribe and all that stuff. You can also support the channel on Patreon, but for now, I just hope you enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Bye.